guys, Haight Street Boys here, and I am at the Beat Museum right now with Jerry Cimino, owner and fabulousness, who's opening the Counterculture Museum in March of 2025. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Thank you.
V Vale.
Welcome.
I mean, V for Vale.
Welcome. You know, there's a funny story about that, my last name.
Yeah.
I grew up in Baltimore.
Okay.
And everybody in Baltimore pronounced my name as Cimino. My father grew up with Cimino.
Ah.
And he would take a great umbrage if anybody pronounced it a different way. But when I finally got out of Baltimore and started seeing the world a little bit, I realized most people pronounce my last name as Cimino. And then when I moved to an Italian place in Monterey, California, where there's a lot of Italian fishermen, everybody said, "You're Jerry Cimino. Why aren't you pronouncing your name right?" So one day I was returning some calls, and there's a friend sitting next to me, and I go, I left 3 voicemails. "Hey Joe, it's Jerry. You know, it's Joe, it's Jerry Cimino, and I got your message. I'll call you later. Hey Paul, it's Jerry Cimino. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
And hey Billy, it's Jerry Cimino. Like what you're saying." And this person looks at me and says, "Do you realize you're schizophrenic or what? I mean, you just pronounced your last name 3 different ways in a minute." And I said, "Well, I knew this guy when I was a kid in Baltimore, and I knew this guy when I was working for IBM in the big city. And then I met this person, you know, and they knew me in a Sicilian little town. And so why make anybody wrong?" That was my attitude. Huh. So I answer to all of them.
Wow, yeah. Nice story, man. Kind of explains who you are.
Yeah.
But and I know we don't have to go into the history of this joint as much as, I mean, we do, but we don't, because it, you know.
I can make it fast if you want.
Not just. I know you started. Let me do. This is one of the best.
Yeah.
The kooky Neil Cassidy. So I know that you started in Monterey, so maybe we start there. Okay. Yeah, I'll let you do the thing. You know the deal.
Yeah. Why don't
Take me away.
Yeah. The Beat Museum grew out of my wife's coffee house bookshop, which was located in Monterey, California. And we had that for a number of years, but after it started, Starbucks moved in across the street, and a big Borders bookstore opens, and all these big other competitors opened. And we just couldn't keep it together because there were like 5 coffee shops and a couple of bookstores all within walking distance. Mm-hmm. So we closed it after 5 years. And one day, my wife later went to become a career counselor. And she did really well at it. She actually still does it. And she opened up an office in downtown Monterey. And it was a fairly big space, but it had 2 different entrances, separate entrances. So one day, I was ready to leave corporate America, and I said, you know, why don't I take my beat collection out of the garage, we'll stick it in this extra room you got down there, we'll call it a museum and see if anybody shows up. And she says, that's a good idea, why don't you try it? So we did, we got some press in our local paper, and the day we opened, a guy walked in the door and handed us this Jack Kerouac, Steve Allen poetry for the Beat generation. So on the fantasy label that came out of Berkeley. And I recognized it, and I knew this is probably worth $300.
Saul's Ants, wasn't it? Fantasy? Anyway, go ahead.
I don't know who the...
Yeah. Anyway, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, I said, I know this is worth like $300, and I don't have the money to pay you for that. I just opened yesterday. And the guy goes, I'm not looking for money. You need to put it on the wall. This is important. This is history. You got to tell the young people what the history was of their lives. So I accepted it, and that was the very first thing we ever had donated. But we built this museum on various things that had been donated. 95% of the stuff you're going to be filming right here, right now, was donated by somebody. Sometimes things just show up in the mail, unannounced, unexpected. So we talk about the influences of the Beat generation, who the precursors were. They were very well read. Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, William Burroughs, that was what was on their bookshelves. And, you know, they read Whitman, and they read Proust, and they read Thomas Wolfe, and Patchen, and William Carlos Williams, and the classics, Thoreau, and Shakespeare, and everybody else.
Camus.
Yeah,
that's a big one. Yeah.
They were big into the French.
Yeah.
And so then we talk about how jazz was the happening thing. In the 1940s, 1950s, jazz was what, if you were hip, you would go to jazz clubs. This is pre-television. So, you know, we talk to young people, we get classes in a lot, and I expect we're going to get a lot of classes into the Counterculture Museum too.
Yay!
I know, I'm looking forward to it. And so,
we'll get to the Counterculture Museum in a sec, kids.
sorry.
No, we're great. No, keep going, man. Just take your time. This is so groovy.
You know, David Amram was a friend of Jack Kerouac's, and that's him with Kerouac in this photo. And this, I saw David speak many times. He played with world-class musicians. He played with, you know, Willie Nelson. He played with, you know,
what
Leonard
instrument?
Bernstein. Oh God, he plays everything. Oh. He plays the flute and piano and God, he plays.
He's still around.
He's 93 years old.
Holy
I just
moly!
spoke to him a week ago.
Bless
and he
his
still
heart.
does his work, and he still travels.
Bless his heart.
And he always gives a nod to Kerouac, and he always tells the story about, you know, young people. You got to find what sets your passion afire. You know,
Say that again, because that parallels what V. Vale was just telling me. Young people.
Find something that you love and find a way to do it. And basically, he says, look, you're 20 years old. You're right out of high school or you're in college, and your mom wants you to be a doctor, and your dad wants you to be a lawyer, and you want to be an artist or a painter or maybe an architect. You might want to be anything else, but you don't want to, you know, disappoint your parents because they want something different. They want you to be safe. And he goes, we all have people in our lives who love us so much they don't want us to be hurt, and they encourage us not to take risks. And his point was, if that's happening to you, you got to love those people, especially if they're your family. You got to love them, you got to bless them, but hang out with the people that support your dreams.
Yeah.
You got to find something that you love. And I can tell you this from personal experience, when you do what you love, you're not working.
There you go.
You know, you're digging it. That's
Yeah.
all. So
Peggy Caserta, who sadly just left the planet, but she's up with Janice now. She wrote in my book, in fact, I ran into some trouble. It says, always have a dream. And she added to that, and she said it to me, always have a dream, and if you don't have one, go find one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if it doesn't work out, go find another one.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says you can't, you know, change your dreams.
Right.
So,
and have fun, maybe.
Exactly. You got to have fun while you're doing it. So jazz was an important part of it. And, you know, and it's the spontaneity of jazz that caused Kerouac to change his writing style. If you think about, you know, you got a trio, and one guy's playing a horn, and somebody's playing a keyboard, and somebody's playing a drum set. And all of a sudden, you know, you have somebody take a solo, and the horn guy passes it to the guy on the drums, he passes it to the keyboard, and they mix it up, and all of a sudden they complete, and they're done, and it's probably never played the same way twice. Wow. And that's the spontaneity of jazz that Jack based his writing upon.
I was going to say, it's like a good conversation that's bouncing around and riffing. And
he would often listen to jazz when he was writing. Yeah. Now, over there on the other side of the car, when we get there, you'll see a painting that looks just like a Jackson Pollock. I've had many people ask me, is that a real Jackson Pollock? Yeah. And obviously I always say, well, the last Jackson Pollock sold for $30 million. Yeah. So, you know, you can have this one for $100,000.
Now, my eyes just kind of went and wandered over here. Ramblin' Jack Elliott's a dear friend of mine. Tell me about this.
Well, Jack's been here a few times.
I love Jack. Jack, we love you.
Jack's unique in a lot of ways because he knew Kerouac in New York City. And in fact, when Kerouac read or wrote On the Road, Jack Elliott was the guy that Kerouac read it to in the manuscript form, and it took a day to do it. And then, of course, in the time comes along, and he's in the 70s, he's playing with Dylan on the Rolling Thunder tour. This was Allen Ginsberg's shirt that he got from that tour, because Allen was there as well.
Wow.
This is a typewriter that belonged to Allen. One of the things I tell young people a lot is, just like you've already had 4 computers in your life and you're 16 years old, these guys have many typewriters, you know. This would have been a 60s portable model.
Of course.
And this is about the Howell trial. Jake Ehrlich wrote this book called The Howell is a Censor, and he's the lawyer who won the Howell trial to keep Ferlinghetti out of jail. Ferlinghetti could have gone to jail for publishing Howell, and he was acquitted, of course. And it happened literally a block down the street where the Hilton is right now in North Beach, Chinatown.
Yeah.
So then we get into World War II. And I love to tell the kids this. World War II is the biggest thing to happen in the 20th century, bar none. There's nothing that compares. 1968 is probably a close second, but World War II was gargantuan. And what we did here is we talked about how the Beats were involved in World War II. Lawrence Ferlinghetti was a commander on a sub-chaser.
Holy shit.
I know. And he was at D-Day in 1944 when we stormed the beaches of France. And he was on a ship, literally at Normandy. And then he gets transferred to the Pacific, and a year later, he's walking into Nagasaki a month after we dropped the bomb. And he found a nothing but devastation, of course. Oh my God. And he was shocked. He finds this intact teacup sitting on the ground in Nagasaki. And as he picks it up to look at it, he realized there's a finger, the top end of a finger fused to this teacup. And the person was standing there drinking their morning tea when the bomb went off and evaporated the person and just left the teacup on the ground with his finger protected by the cup, which is why that's the only thing that survived.
Wow.
Kerouac.
I was going to say that's Kerouac.
That's Jack Kerouac's induction photo.
Baby.
Yeah, it's a great picture. And his best friend, Sammy Sampas, who's on the right there, he was killed at Anzio. Now, they were childhood friends in Lowell, Massachusetts. Sammy was a Greek kid, and Jack later married his sister years later. But Sammy was killed at Anzio in 1944. And so there was great loss. And here's another huge loss. That ship is the SS Dorchester. Jack was a merchant marine during the war, and he would run war material between the United States and Great Britain. And on this ship, he would help deliver supplies for the war effort before the U.S. got into the war. And one day, his coach at Columbia calls him back to play football, and he winds up not making that particular trip. And the ship was sunk at sea, and 675 guys died in that. So it was a huge, Brandon wrote this great piece called The Profundity of Loss. And that's what that was about, all the loss of the war. We'll get back to that in a minute. Let me introduce my wife, Estelle.
Hi, Estelle.
Hi there.
Yay.
Linda.
Haight Street Voice. I'm Linda Kelly.
Nice to meet
Yay.
you.
We're not live. We're just doing a walk through the lead up to the Counterculture Museum.
Okay,
and how
you.
excited we are that you're going to be there
Well,
in
thank
the
you.
spring. Seriously.
Cool.
I'm so excited.
Well, I'm glad. Thank you so much.
Block from my house. So yay.
You live that close, a block?
I'm on Page and Masonic, so it's 2 blocks, all said and done. And I used to live in that building. My apartment was 612 Ashbury above that corner in 1981 when I went to SF State. Anyway, not about me. It's about this place and how this links. In fact, V. Vale, I just finished interviewing him
Yeah,
around the corner.
nice guy.
And how we were just talking about how it went from the Bohemians to the Beats to the punk to the, and then where are we now? So this is we're sort of launching from here, and how you're going to get to the Counterculture Museum is kind of the arc of that.
Yeah, and Vale obviously is a fellow traveler. I mean,
Yeah.
he and I have talked a lot about this over the years, and he gave one of the greatest quotes that I had ever heard about us. He goes, the system, the people in power don't want the counterculture to be preserved. In fact, it's the last thing they want to be preserved. They want the status quo. They don't want things to change. And he says it's the Beat Museum that, preserves the counterculture. He actually said that. 5 or 10 years ago he said that. We actually put it on a website years ago.
Yay.
So I know that Estelle is going to be going out soon, right?
Yes, very short.
Did you want to talk to her a little bit?
But I mean, we're very organic here. If there's anything that you'd like to say about your
You're mostly going to use this for the transcript to write the piece. Right?
Exactly, but also I might use some pieces of it. I might roll the whole thing if there's no, whatever it is. I always just roll with it because it's better than just doing audio. Because now I have some video. But what are your hopes and dreams with the Counterculture Museum, number one, and also what would you like to say to the Haight community? Because this goes out to a lot of people that love the Haight and Haight-Ashbury and what it represents, the light that lit the '60s. So, what are your hopes and dreams with the CCM, and what would you like to say to the community?
Well, first of all, I think that,
our goal is to be very community oriented. That's what we've been here at the Beat Museum, is that we embrace the community. We're not there to change the community. We're there to be a part of the community. And, you know, one of the things that I believe in is uplifting others. And so, you know, obviously we want to do really well, but we also want to uplift all the other businesses and people in the community. And hopefully we'll be able to do that. Maybe bring an extra spark to the neighborhood that brings more tourists and shoppers and interest. So yeah, not only do we do well, everyone else does. So that's what we're all about. And, you know, we have always done that and will continue to do that over in the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood. You know, we really want to, help people to better understand, what these countercultures are and how much they've had impact on, society throughout the years and making what we thought was lasting change, but making change that's really needed. And, you think about, Jerry can tell you all about the beats, but think about, civil rights and women's rights and LGBTQ plus and environmentalism. This really, a lot of the happenings happened way back, they really started way back in before the 1950s, but our eras that we're focusing on are the 50s, 60s, and 70s, primarily right in that little sweet spot. But so much happened. And I even remember how the changes in the laws affected me personally. And, I've lived through that. And maybe you have, maybe Jerry has. And I personally remember when women were given the right to open up their own bank account, and women were given the right to, open up credit cards in their own name. And one of my stories is that obviously it'll tell your age, but my age, not your age, but my age is that when the law changed that women could open up bank accounts and credit cards in their own name, I marched to my local bank, and I was 17 years old at that time, and obviously 18 was legal or adult age. Yeah. And I walked in and I said, I want to open up my own checking account. And the manager was waiting on me, and he said, well, you're not quite old enough. I said, the law just changed. You can make an exception. I will be 18 in 3 months, so please do it for me. And he knew it was important to me to be able to do that, so he opened it up. I didn't tell my parents, I just did it. And probably a year or two later, they discovered I had my own checking account and I was paying my own bills and so forth. I had a job when I was 15.
What state were you in?
Maryland.
Maryland, okay.
That's where Jerry and I were born and raised. Okay. And so that really had meaning to me. Okay.
And on the opposite end of that spectrum is the fact that our women's right, our bodies are being, that whole right is being, whatever is going to happen. Pray that we're going to get it back again. But that's, so the importance of the museum for the kids that are seeing this, wow, it's all going backwards. To get a perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's good for them to know what it was, how it changed for the what I believe was the positive, and now it's going backwards as you just described. And it's not up to me and my generation to go do the fighting anymore, but I want to help others, in the younger generations, that if you want change, you've got to go out there and do something about it. You don't have to, take a gun and shoot people. Obviously, that's not what I'm promoting, but get in the streets and protest or figure out, good ways of making things happen.
And also connect with your friends and family. Talk about things, right? Communicate. Yeah. That's my big thing is talk about stuff.
Communication is, I think the communication is key to everything.
Not on your texting. I'm talking about in person, talking to each other. Right?
Exactly. Sitting in a room together. Yeah. Even going, if you're protesting in a march, people are there in person, and you get a better connection. You listen to people, doing speeches or, whatever. Then you feel like you're really connected to the cause, but you're connected to people who are like-minded. And I just think it's wonderful.
Let me ask you, thank you. I was talking to Vale about this. I feel like what we're missing is a place in the Haight, because I've lived there over 40 years with 10 years in New York when I said screw the hippie thing and moved to New York for 10 years. But anyway, we don't really have a place to hang out and talk about stuff. We don't have a place to sit is the Counterculture Museum going to be a place where you can sit on the couch and have a conversation, or is it much like this, or?
Yeah, we have events here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm so sorry.
We have events here, and we expect to do the same thing at the CCM, Counterculture Museum. And
But say if I'm
a
a tourist from out of town and I come in and I see a couch and there's a book, I can sit down and read a book for a little bit. Yeah.
Sure. We're going to have a gift shop, book shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we and you never know how things change once you open something up too.
Right.
Because where's the demand? What do people want?
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, we're embracing. We want people to walk in the door. We expect to have a lot of events, and we are there to give the people what they want when we can.
Yeah.
Can I interject for a second while we still have Estelle? She's the one who came up with this idea for the Counterculture Museum 5 years ago.
Bless you.
Yay.
5 years ago, the Beat Museum's been my passion. But 5 years ago, Estelle said to
I
me,
like it, but it's more him.
she said, Jer, what do people really need in the world right now? They need something to believe in. They need to understand where things came from and how it affects their lives today. Because the Counterculture Museum is not just history. It's about the present, and how does that shift, and why? And if you don't know the past and the mistakes of the past, you're bound to repeat them. You've heard that. That's an old adage. And so our intent is to, educate, especially school groups, high school groups, college school groups, and also, bring people together and allow them to participate and figure out what's right for them.
It's a no judgment zone, essentially, because, we believe, and I know Jerry does too, but, and Brandon, who is with us here.
Hey, Brandon.
Yes, Brandon is a wonderful employee. He's been with us a long time, but it's really about authenticity. What is your truth? And it's about living your truth. And I think Haight-Ashbury is a neighborhood that, represents living to your truth and being authentic as much as possible. And that's what we want to promote is you don't have to be, someone that someone tells you to be. I know parents do that a lot, and I know they mean well, but sometimes being an engineer is just not the right fit for someone.
Right.
And they have to be true to their own passions. I come from a background of being actually a career counselor, a career coach. So I help young people and older people and, people of all ages, shapes, and sizes, to figure out, what are their skills, what are their passions, what are their interests, and how can you get out there in the world of work and do what really fits for you, but also fits for what the needs are out there. And I think that, in the Counterculture Museum, we're going to be able to, do that and show that a lot of people who did very important things were living their passion, and they were being true to themselves. Yeah, sometimes they ended up in jail for what they believed in, but a lot of them also knew that was going to happen.
Yeah,
when it
I'm thinking
did.
of like Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead. A kid,
Exactly.
Peggy Caserta that had Nasidica, coming from New Orleans. Oh, I'll open a clothing shop. I mean, always having a dream. That coming back to that.
I mentioned David Amram earlier.
Yeah.
And one of his great lines is, "Don't confuse what you do to make a living and pay your bills with who you really are."
Oh.
You may be an artist, a painter, a musician, or a sculptor, or a concert, pianist, or whatever. But maybe you bartend to pay the bills. Maybe you are a waiter in order to make the money to pay the rent. And that's a part of authenticity. That's not selling out. That's finding a way to do more than one thing at once.
It's called a portfolio career when you do more than one thing to earn an income.
Oh, I like that. People, did you hear that? Portfolio.
Yeah, and
Thank you,
it's-
Estelle.
And from some of my clients, that's what they do. They might have a full-time job being an engineer or whatever it is that they do, or it's bagging groceries at the grocery store. But on the side, they're writing poetry or whatever it is, or they're painting because that's what has meaning to them. And maybe one day they can switch and be an artist full-time and the engineer part-time or whatever it might be. But or some people have 3 things that they do. I know I've always run around with 2 or 3 things myself, so I know it works. It can be kind of hectic sometimes, but it does work.
I always get a little upset when people say that my magazine is a hobby. I say, no, it's the thing I do from my heart.
Yeah.
You know, and I study with Ben Fong Torres. You know, I know, you know, I have another side gig, but that's okay. I'm cool with that because I know at my side gig, I get to go back to my
Right. Keeps
my
you-
magazine,
keeps
not
you
my
together.
hobby, the thing
Right.
that is connected to
Your
my heart.
passion.
So I really appreciate that. You don't have, it's not I love that. That's great.
No, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably got to get going.
Yes, I am going to take off.
Thank you, and we'll see you in the Haight.
Yes, thank
All
you.
right,
You gonna come
Estelle.
down here with Kira,
Thanks so
or you gonna
much.
go?
Huh?
You going to come down with Kira, or are you going to go from upstairs?
I don't know. We'll see. Where's the car?
Trieste.
Okay, I might just go out. Oh.
Okay.
Unless you want Linda to meet her.
Have you met our dog?
No.
Greatest dog in America.
Okay.
I'll bring her down.
Oh yeah, bring her down. Bring her down. Cool. All right, we get to meet a dog, ladies and gentlemen.
Really
We're dog friendly in our interviews.
As she's getting our current family, this is my family.
Oh.
This is my dad
No.
in Berlin,
Oh, no
1944, 1945.
Wow.
He was
Name?
Jack Cimino.
Jack.
Not Cimino, Jack Cimino.
There you go.
He was drafted in 1944, and he was in occupied Berlin in 1945. You know what they did with? He was 18 years old. You know what they did with these young troops? They had them play baseball or soccer or football, and every day to keep them occupied. They're 18 years old with guns.
Yeah.
And they played at Olympic Stadium, the same stadium that Jesse Owens won the medal. Wow. That's my mom.
Oh, look at
My
that.
dad, he met my mother. Her name was Lorraine. They both passed. And my dad met my mother on the 4th of July, 1946.
Wow.
Not long after he got back to the U.S. after serving overseas. And then my brother was born a few years later, and I was born after him. But we wanted to show
Yeah.
this is what the American family, the average American family did. They aspired to the American dream.
Yeah.
They wanted to get married, have a couple of kids, get a house in the suburbs, a 2-car garage,
Yeah.
and that's what people aspired to. Other people didn't necessarily aspire to it. Allen Ginsberg was gay.
Yeah.
He never dreamed he could have a family. You know, he didn't dream he could get married. He died in 1997. So, you know, for him, it was a different type of American dream. For Kerouac, he couldn't even barely take care of himself in a lot of ways, much less a wife and children. So he had a tragic life in that sense, a personal life.
Yeah.
But these few people are the ones that changed the course of the world because they followed an authentic path.
Yeah.
You know, Allen had to write his poetry, and he writes poetry that changed the world.
Yeah.
Jack had to write his novels, and his novels changed the world. There wouldn't be a Haight-Ashbury had it not been for Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg. The Howe trial happened in 1957, and Kerouac's On the Road came out in 1957. The Russians launched Sputnik in 1957.
So it's funny because 67 is kind of a
That's the
number that
thing.
everybody rings
There
in their
never
ear.
would have been a 1967
Without
had there not been a 1957
57.
10 years prior, because they were the tribal elders to the Beats. I mean, to the
hippies.
hippies.
Yeah.
The Beats were the Beats were born in the 20s. The front end of the hippies, they were born in the 40s.
Yeah.
They were 45, 46, 47.
Yeah.
That was the front end of the people, and you know, older people, of course, who might have been born. in the
And what do you
30s.
think the connection is? Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around here, but
Okay.
Vale and I, again, what's the connection between North Beach and the Haight? Geographically,
Well-
vibe-wise, all of that.
Well, the vibe's similar. Yeah, obviously, it's much
Small,
more tie-dye.
yeah,
Everybody knows everybody, you know, that's the thing, whether you're here or over
Neighborhoody.
there. We get a lot of draw from over there. But as far as how the hippies wound up in the Haight, the story I've been told by a lot of old-timers in this neighborhood is the Beats, you know, because of City Lights Bookstore, they
Yeah.
gathered here. They went to the bars on Grand Avenue and to the various jazz joints here on Broadway.
Yeah.
And then,
Janis Joplin played at the Grant and Green.
yeah, exactly.
You know.
And so they were here, and then when the Russians launched Sputnik, that's where the term beatnik came about. And the same types of tourist buses we see all the time around here these days in both neighborhoods, they started driving down Grand Avenue, laughing at the dirty beatniks sitting on the streets. And rents started going up, and that meal you used to get for $1 was now $1.50 or whatever. And a bunch of the girls went over to the college over in the Haight, and the boys followed the girls, and next thing you know, they're little hipsters. They became the little hipsters, and then that became the hippies.
What was the college in the Haight? You mean SF State? Not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's right. Gators.
So,
All right.
So
Thanks for
that's-
that little interjection.
right. So anyway, this is the war.
Okay.
And then we get to New York City, because that's where they all met. They met at Columbia University. And I love these photographs. These photographs were all donated to us by the family of Fred McDara. And the ones on top is the family of Bert Glynn. And this is Gregory Corso at a poetry reading where he almost gets into a fight with a reporter. Look at that little quad trick over there, that little these are a little series of photos where he's ready to fight with the reporter. And here comes Kira.
Oh, here comes family. Hi,
All
beautiful. Hi. I
Lucky
love
girl.
dogs. Oh my God.
All right, girl.
Hi, beautiful. Hi. Oh my God, you're beautiful. Yay! I bet we'll be seeing her at the Counterculture Museum.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah,
She's gonna be
the
our
Yay!
She's
Yay!
the resident reader.
Yay!
You're a good girl.
Thank you
Okay.
so. Oh my God, she's beautiful.
You're a good girl.
Thank you so much, Estelle.
Oh,
Thanks
of
for
course,
everything.
my pleasure.
And nice to meet you, baby cakes. We'll see you around.
See you, baby.
Yay! Oh, love
for
you
stopping
guys. You
down.
guys are awesome. You guys are the best. Okay,
we enjoy
so this guy get Corso.
Corso
Yep.
is the guy being held back by one of the guys organized the
God.
thing because he's ready to fight the guy at a poetry reading. And then these are by Fred McDara, the ones of the beatnik pads. I mean, look at these places. So it's kind of interesting to see, those images.
Wow.
Then we move in to
Whoa, look at that. That's a pad? I mean,
look,
that
just
is
the mattress
just.
and all the crap on the floor and the
Ooh.
poets and the various things written on the looks like they're painted on the wall.
That painting on the wall looks like, wow. What a trip.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that.
So then we get into North Beach. So the Beats leave New York City. Well, there plenty of Beats still stayed in New York City, but Ginsberg comes out to California. Kerouac, they came because of Neil Cassidy. One time I was on the radio and being interviewed by Willie Brown and Will Durst, Will and Willie show. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
And Willie Brown goes, Jerry, what brought the Beat generation to San Francisco? Is it our progressive culture? Is it the San Francisco Renaissance? Is it the inclusiveness and the compassion that we all have for one another?
Well, I told Vale because we talked about the same thing, and I said it was the Wild West. My whole family came
That's
here.
true.
Yeah,
You're right.
when
You're right. It's the end of the ocean. Kerouac
It's
says
the-
that on the road. No
Yeah.
more land, said Dean. We can't go no more further because there ain't no more
all
land.
the crazies went west. And
Right.
Go ahead.
But the point here, when Willie asked me the question,
Yeah.
was you'd like to think it was all those things, the tolerance and the compassion for others and the inclusivity that we've got.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the motto of the Beats were, we don't care who you are, what you look like, or what you're doing. As long as you don't hurt anybody else, come join our party. And that's how they lived, and that was passed on to the hippies. And so, they embraced people, but when Willie asked me that question, I said, you'd like to think it's all those things, Willie Brown, but the reality was Neil Cassidy was chasing a girl. His wife, Carolyn Cassidy, that he had met in Denver, wanted to be a costume designer. And she was trying to get to Hollywood, and she didn't know anybody in LA. So she comes to San Francisco first to kind of get settled in the new state, and then she was going to make her way to LA. But before she could get down there, Neil caught up with her here, and they got married in 1948, and they lived up on Hyde Street and Union, right up on top of the hill.
Yeah.
And then Ginsberg comes following after Neil, and Jack comes out here to visit quite a few times. He lived with them right up here, on Nob Hill. And so, the history of North Beach in many ways, in addition to the Italian immigrants, comes from City Lights and Ferlinghetti's influence. And this is
Jazz, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
sure, because all these strip clubs used to be jazz clubs. That's the Sentinel building that is now owned by Francis Coppola.
Your Italian brother,
Yeah, me and Francis.
which I heard. Sorry again, interjecting, but tangentializing. They're making this into a hotel.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, yes.
Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, it is, actually.
I mean, that'll be.
Yeah, allow people to go in and stay there.
Yeah.
This is a great piece. This
Okay.
is Bob Kaufman. He was one of the most beloved poets here in North Beach.
Say his name again?
Bob Kaufman.
Okay.
And this is the photograph that painting
Oh,
is
okay.
taken from. That was taken by Jean Durkis, and she gave us that photograph. And the photo was taken right up on Grant Avenue. And then one day there was a black painter by the name of George Pennywell, and a friend of his in 1987 commissioned him to paint this picture of Bob. When Bob died, he had a funeral procession going all the way down Grant, and they took his ashes to the bay, and there was a big event. And you'll notice these are the bagel shop and the coffee gallery and the Coexistence Bagel Company and the Place. These are the places where everybody hung out here in North Beach. And he's got the peace symbol around his neck. And actually, he's wearing it in the picture, but you can't see it. But you can see the chain in the photograph that you just took the picture of.
Yeah. Or that I'm
You can
filming.
You can see the chain.
Yeah.
So this is a great picture. Oh, and there's the records that were made at the Hungry Eye.
Oh yeah.
Lenny
Which is
Bruce.
Michael Stepanian used to work there as a waiter.
Did he?
Yeah.
And this is what Broadway looked like in the golden years.
Oh yeah, when Carol Dota's tits were still blinking. I remember it well. I used to go to the Fab Mab in '77 or something crazy.
These are some photos by a guy named C.R. Snyder that were donated to us by his family.
Where is it? That's like outside. Looks like maybe
That's the coffee gallery. You can see
Oh, yeah.
right around where the balloons are. It looks like it's probably a North Beach fair if I had to guess.
Wow.
And this is Ferlinghetti and Shig. Shig was the guy who was arrested by the cops for selling Howell.
Okay.
And then Ferlinghetti came back and surrendered himself, and they were the two that had to stand trial for selling Howell. And so the judge, with a pretrial motion, said, well, Shig, we can't prove that you knew what you were selling. But Ferlinghetti, you published this book, so you're the guy that's got to stand trial. And the prosecution tried to make it look like it was a dirty book. It's poetry. It's nothing but words on a page. It's poetry. But it uses a lot of four-letter words that kids learn when they're 7 years old in today's world. But in 1956, you didn't put them in a book.
Yeah.
And so he had to stand trial, and they had all these academics in there and talking about it. And basically, what the judge ruled at the end of the day, evil to he who sees evil. If you think that just using this word is obscene, then you're the one that might have the problem.
Yeah.
Because the poet might be trying to get your attention by saying things like, go fuck yourself with your atom bomb to the American government. But that doesn't make it obscene.
Right.
It's an idea.
free speech,
expressed.
isn't it?
Exactly. This is another fantastic exhibit on the women of the Beat Generation. And so the women kind of got short shrift.
Yeah.
And, it's not anything new, and it still happens, obviously. The New York City publishing contractors, or publishing houses rather, they wanted the men's stories. So they published Kerouac and William Burroughs and John Cleland Holmes and other writers. And the women were basically mothers and homemakers and girlfriends and daughters, but they didn't get the publishing contracts. This is Ruth Weiss.
Whose typewriter was over there.
Typewriters over there.
Yeah.
Ruth passed away a few years ago. She was really good friends, especially with Estelle. We had her 90th birthday here. It's online. And that beautiful book there with that.
Looks almost like Cezanne or something.
If you look over there, we'll be passing that in just a minute. See it in the corner? When Ruth passed away, that was given to us.
Oh man, wow.
But there were a lot of women who were like Ruth. They weren't getting published by the publishers, so they'd publish their own books. They would just go out and read their own poetry. Yeah. And Ruth used to tell a story. Like one time a guy comes up to her and says, who's ever going to read your books? She's got her little chapbooks, right? And he's going, who's ever going to read your books? You're a girl. And she said, I'm going to read my books. I'm going to do it on the street corner, and I'm going to do it loud. And then she even has a thing about say it out loud. And she was a firecracker. She was a great woman.
Love you, Ruth.
Yeah, truly. This is the Howell trial. And had it not been for the Howell trial, we wouldn't be talking about any of this stuff. And the reason is because it was the trial that put the Beat Generation on the map.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, everybody wanted to read the dirty book. They went from selling a few at a time to thousands at a time because what's all the excitement about? He was in Life magazine. That's Ferlinghetti and Shig, in the court. And that's Jake Ehrlich in the upper left corner where it says big day for the bards. And this is the moment that everything shifted because once he was acquitted, a barrier had been broken.
Wow. Wow.
There were other people. There were lots of artists. The thing is, the Beats weren't just the creative types. Their friends, were the bartenders and the students, and they did all kinds of things. But many of them were various artists as well.
Yep.
And, and then they wound up becoming over at the Fillmore Street. There were lots of artist studios in Marina District, and there were a lot of famous names over there.
Dennis Hopper, and who's that?
Bruce Conner. He was a friend of Michael McClure's,
Oh yeah.
and
Who lived in the Haight, by the way?
yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's brought McClure to San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
This is the moment we call the birth of the Beat generation. It's 1944, New York City, right at the height of World War II. The guy's name on the left is Hal Chase, and he was a childhood friend of Neil Cassidy's. Kerouac has got the cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah.
He's only 22. In the white coat is Allen Ginsberg. He's 18 years
Oh
old.
my Lord.
And Burroughs is in the hat, and he is already 30. So he's 12 years older than Ginsberg. And he's schooling the young guys.
Wow.
Alan, you need to read, Dostoevsky. And Jack, you need to read Proust.
Spoon feeding him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it was Hal Chase on the left,
Yeah.
who not too long after this photograph was taken, Neil Cassidy came to visit Hal Chase, and then wound up meeting Kerouac and Ginsberg and Burroughs.
So this is in San Francisco.
No,
No,
this
that's
is
in New York.
Columbia University.
Columbia. Got it. Sorry.
New York
Sorry.
City. Mm-hmm. It is, like we say, it's the first known photograph of the Beats,
Okay, thank you.
and they were students at Columbia.
That's right. In fact, Vivel's dad, real dad, apparently he and Kerouac wanted to try and start a magazine at Columbia. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. Yeah. Hey, this is a great story about this. Kerouac was a football hero. That was his coach, Lou Little, and football was what got Kerouac out of Lowell, Massachusetts. It was his ticket out of the little town to the big city. And so we were looking to build an exhibit about his football time. And this is a program from the Columbia Cornell game, I think it is.
Oh,
and this is the Army Columbia game. So this is 1943, 44, 45.
Wow.
So I was ready to lock up this exhibit, but I needed a football and it had to look old, right? And I'm looking on Craigslist, I'm looking on eBay, I'm trying to find an old football. I'm calling friends, I'm saying, who's got an old football? Nobody had anything that was newer than the 1980s or 90s or, whatever, or older rather.
Yep.
So one day I woke up and I screamed at God and I said, would you just have a football show up in my life and do it quick? And I swear to God, I was at the front desk later that afternoon when a kid from Amsterdam comes walking in, tossing this football in the air. He was staying at the Green Tortoise. And I looked at it and I said, where did you get that football? He said, I found it out on the street. I said, I'll give you free admission if you give me that football. He goes, I got 5 friends at the Green Tortoise. I said, go get them. You can all come in. And that's how I got my football. Wow. Is that an unbelievable story?
That's serendipity, synchronicity, all that cool stuff.
It is.
Because you're in here doing cool stuff. So it came to you.
It did. So these are a couple items that are going to go to Haight Street.
Okay.
This is
Counterculture Museum, ladies and gentlemen.
and this is a UPI photo. You can see it's typed on the right. This is 1965 at a rally for the legalization of marijuana in 1965, and Ginsberg is in that protest. And this is the same day. He's wearing the exact same outfit. He's holding a different sign. But this is an old thing. When we first came to San Francisco, I went to Serendipity Books and met the guy that ran it. And we were looking around like, what can we put in the museum? And he says, you're building a museum about the Beats? I said, yeah. I said, how much is this thing? He goes, for you, it's free. That belongs in a museum. And it's been here ever since, but now it's got to go to the Counterculture.
Oh, that is because that is so incredible.
It is, isn't it?
Oh my God. And that's clearly New York because it's snowing.
Well, it's definitely East Coast. Could be, I don't know.
Right.
It probably says on here if we read the photo.
Oh, okay.
So then we've got
Wow, this is oof.
Isn't it cool? So then we got other stuff. This is the time when the mountaintop, they were big environmentalists. They really dug the idea of saving the planet. This is Gary Snyder with Lou Welsh and Phil Whalen. They were from Portland. They were from Reed College. Snyder's in the middle. That's Lou you're looking at, and that's Snyder and Phil Whalen. And Snyder, who's still alive today, is a huge environmentalist.
Gary Snyder.
Yeah. And you know, today we would call it climate change. But you know, they were talking about saving the whales, saving the dolphins back in the 50s. Yeah. You know, and they read those types of poems at the original 6th reading at the 6th Gallery in 55. They were talking about saving the life of the planet.
Wow.
And then they were in Paris at the Beat Hotel.
Oh yeah, I wanted to get a thing of this.
Yeah, that's Ruth.
Ruth Stein, correct? Weiss.
Weiss.
Weiss. Sorry, kids.
Taking it all in. All right.
So a lot of them spent time in Paris, and the place is called the Beat Hotel. This is something that was donated to us not too long ago. This is probably 30 books of copies of On the Road from different countries. These are all, they're all different countries at different times. You know, this is, I guess, Spanish, and I don't know what year it is, but it looks pretty old to me. This is a 1980s version out of China, and it looks like Beverly Hills 90210 or something. I mean, that's On the Road.
Oh my God.
So it's about 15 years ago, we had a exhibition of about 100 different On the Roads from different parts of the world. And then this guy named Horst Spandler, who lived in Germany, shipped it out to us. Yeah, he's a great guy, actually. And he loaned us this stuff for 6 months. And it was so popular that we kept it up for 2 years. And then finally one day he says, you know, I got something happening in London, so can you ship them back? And we did. And then 5-7 years after that, Horst donated the entire collection to us. And this is only a small part of it.
Utan. Utan. How do you just say it in one word there?
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? So then, this entire wall will probably get shifted to the Counterculture Museum. Because
Kesey.
it's Kesey and Ram Dass,
Yeah.
Janice,
Yes,
of course, Leary,
Timmy, Jerry,
a painting party, psychedelic party.
Yeah.
And this is a protest over in the Presidio.
Robert Altman. Okay.
Yeah.
Ben Fonturis. Hey, Ben, shout
Yeah,
out.
yeah, that's right.
My teacher. Go Gators.
And Altman gave all this stuff to us. The human being.
Robert Altman gave you all this
Yeah.
shit? Wow, that's an honor.
When we first opened up, he was at our grand opening. So,
If you don't know who Robert Altman is, look it up.
this is not the film director Robert Altman. This is the photographer Robert Altman. And they're two different people. And Robert, they actually looked alike. They looked a lot alike. So
Thank you because I thought it was the Altman that, yeah. Anyway.
no problem.
Okay.
So one of the biggest events of the 60s would have been the human being.
Beyond the
And it was January 14th, 1967. And Ginsberg was on stage, and Snyder and Ferlinghetti and the poets introduced the program. And then the next thing you know, the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane are taking that same stage. So we've got the poets reading their poetry, and then here come the Airplane and the San Francisco Sound at the human being on the same day. This is a poster of the Gathering of the Tribes.
Yeah.
There's a Stanley piece, which I love because it says On the Road. Stanley gave us that.
What does this say? Hang on.
Who be kind to? This is a poem. It's like basically be kind to everybody because you're being kind to yourself.
Wow.
Yeah, this is obviously a 60s
Yeah,
piece.
that's incredible. By who do you know? Is it Wes Wilson?
I think it is Wes.
I don't have my glasses. It's hard to see.
Yeah, Wes Wilson.
Okay. All right, Wes Wilson.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
So obviously the
Stanley.
overlap.
Oh yeah. See, this is right.
Yeah.
We're right.
It's the overlap between the North Beach and the Haight,
Yep.
between the 50s and the 60s. Protest, Peace March in April. God just walked in. All this stuff was given to us. This On the Road piece that Stanley gave us. And I love it because it's, it's the
Oh, yeah.
it's the skeleton
Yeah.
and On the Road,
Yeah.
which is fascinating. So, like I said, a lot of this stuff will transfer
Yeah.
directly.
Oh, and posters. Look at this. Wow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I can show you, again, this is
Yeah.
this is stuff that's been coming in the mail. Some of it's people dropping it off or picking it up. And here's the doors and that's the Avalon Ballroom. Again, the doors.
Yeah.
Again, the doors.
Yeah.
I like this piece because it's about the 1963 March on Washington, jobs, peace, and freedom. And that's basically, obviously a piece that resonates.
Yeah.
And then, this is probably how we'll close off the story, with nuclear war. I mean, come on, let's talk about the fact that, we are a planet living on the edge.
Yeah.
So we have a message that we want to be able to tell. So these things will be framed up and put in the museum. I love Wavy. Wavy's been here many times.
I'm trying to get a hold of him for this edition, to tell you the truth.
Hopefully we can.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite Ferlinghetti posters. It's about the crucifixion of Christ, but he brings it up to the modern age. Wow. I actually used to do this on stage a lot. Sometime during eternity, some guys show up, and one of them who shows up real late is a kind of a carpenter from some square type place like Galilee, and he starts wailing and claiming he's hip as to who made heaven and earth, and that the cat who really laid it on us is his dad. I heard that poem when I was 14 years old, and it was like, how do you write about the crucifixion of Jesus like that? And of course it was Ferlinghetti who did it. And that's what led me to the Beats. Ferlinghetti led me to Ginsberg's Howl, and then Howl led me to On the Road, and here we are.
Wow.
I know. So then there's other cool pieces, I love this piece, because this is the Mars Hotel. Kerouac writes about the Mars Hotel. He stayed there. That's why this says On the Road. On the road, everywhere, all summer.
Where was the Mars Hotel?
I have to figure out.
I don't
the
even
exact
know.
address. It's long torn
I know it's
down.
an album.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a real place.
Yeah.
And the Dead were hugely influenced. Dennis McNally.
Of course.
Well-
he's in this edition.
Right, good. And so Dennis, of course, introduced them to On the Road and the Kerouac's work. And of course, he's the
Yeah,
publicist.
Jerry came up to him and said, "Hey, I loved your book about Kerouac."
Right.
Yep.
This is
Bill.
when Bill passed with Steve and Melissa. Yeah, I know. And then there's...
Man, he'd be stoked about the Counterculture Museum. I'll tell you that.
I think he probably would. I appreciate that. So this is sitting on top of our other On the Road collection just temporarily, so I can show it to you, of course. And then we have other pieces that are pretty cool, and we're going to be getting all these framed and
Oh yeah.
put on the wall. So this is a pretty famous one.
Oh yeah. The eyeball.
Yep.
That's Kelly.
Yep.
Walton Kelly, I believe. But yeah.
As well as
Stanley.
Stanley's skeleton.
Ooh,
roses.
Bertha.
This is Allen Ginsberg at the Human Being. This is after the Human Being, of course, but that's the date it celebrates the gathering of the tribes. And
Wow.
this is Students for Democratic Society.
Oh, yeah?
And this is a piece. It's a double-sided piece
Oh my God.
that we're gonna have to frame it up one side or the other. We'll probably put the
Or have it spinning around, maybe hanging.
Yeah, that'd be hard. This is an old, dig this. This is an old Vote Yes to End the War. And it's signed by Eugene McCarthy, the presidential candidate. Isn't that amazing?
And somebody just
Yeah,
donated
people
this
just
to
bring these
here.
things to us.
Wow.
It's kind of neat.
People want to preserve history, man.
Speaking of that, let me show you this.
Yeah.
This came from a really good friend. And we're going to be getting these framed soon. And these are original editions of the Oracle.
Yep.
And this is a great moment because this is the Houseboat Summit. And the Houseboat Summit took place in Sausalito. And it was Leary and Ginsberg, Alan Watts, and Gary Snyder. And they were sitting on the houseboat where Watts lived up in Sausalito. And basically they were talking about the future of the planet and how, Leary's famous for saying, turn on, tune in, and drop out.
Right.
And if Gary's saying, well, you're not dropping out. You can't drop out. You got you got these responsibilities. You got to operate within the system that you're in, but you
Yeah.
can still play your own game.
Yes.
And
I
then
concur.
other oracles. A fascinating fact that I just
in such
learned.
great shape, too.
They are. They were stored flat because it came folded.
Yeah, I know.
But a friend of mine gave me these
It's nice
3
to
or
see it
4
flat.
years ago.
Yeah, beautiful.
A friend of mine brought these to me 3 or 4 years ago. Said you got to have this for the museum. At that time, it was this museum, the Beat Museum, but now it'll be at the Counterculture
And their
Museum.
publishing headquarters was right on Haight Street, right around
1371,
Yeah.
down a block away. Now, Michael Bowen lived there. This is a Michael Bowen piece. And his wife's name is Martine. I've been in touch with her. And she tells great stories about this. We hope to be able to get her in to tell stories at the Counterculture Museum. Because the human being was planned in their apartment. And
Oh yeah, do you know Harry Svi Strouch? You must know
I've
Harry.
heard his name, but
Yeah.
I don't think I know him.
I know him. He lives around the corner.
So this is the human being. This is it was sprung from the Oracle, and it was a psychedelic shop that paid for this to get this launched. And I never knew this because when you think about the impact that this newspaper had on society in the 60s, there were only 12 issues ever
know,
done.
I
That's
know.
fascinating.
That
It
is.
was like less than a year and a half,
Yeah.
and it was constant changing of players,
Yeah.
and people were coming and going, and
Yeah.
they had different little subgroups and segments, These guys were the artists, these guys were the musicians, these guys were the revolutionaries that wanted to, radicalize everything and protest everything, and they had their moments, they had their factions.
And Alan had a dream, I think, that he wanted to have
He
a
did.
newspaper and it wanted to
Right.
be rainbows and in color, right?
This was the last issue.
That's beautiful.
This is... And then...
I love the way it says City of San Francisco, y'all.
Right. Yep. This is probably one of the most beautiful ones. I mean, they're all stunning. And then a woman who knew one of the artists sent us some original drawings that were used in the magazines
Wow.
or the newspapers. So it's
That's
kind of cool.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I love the community that you're sort of pulling together
Yes.
because of a place for things to
Yeah,
go.
out of necessity and not having a budget to really buy stuff,
Right.
people give us this stuff because they say, you know what? I'm 80 years old and my kids don't want this stuff. And so they say, you can, tell the story with it, frankly.
Yeah,
And that's how the
absolutely.
Beat Museum was built. And we anticipate that's exactly how the Counterculture Museum, that's where this stuff, and this is just a small portion of what we've got.
Wow.
This is our newest postcard.
Yay! That
Dig that. This is the one that Brandon designed.
Thank you. What's going down?
Right.
Cool.
So
Let me
that's
take
for what
one.
is-
I'm taking
Oh,
one.
take a
I think I have
stack.
to give you some.
You can have all these.
Perfect.
We put it with your stuff.
All right.
So then, lots of other things.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
here.
yeah. But this is perfect. So, okay, let's talk about. Oh, I'm just looking at hippie sex. I couldn't stop looking at that. Sorry. It pulled me in. It pulled me in. Hippie sex. Just in closing, what are your hopes with the count? I know Stella alluded to it or talked about it a little bit. I didn't even touch that. But what are your hopes and dreams for this Counterculture Museum? What do you want to say to the Haight community?
Well, first we want to say thank you because so many people have reached out to us. We've been contacted by a lot of people, and I've met with a lot of people. You know many of them: Jimmy Siegel and Ben Fong Torres and Holly George.
Yeah.
And other folks, the people, who run the Doolin Larson building have contacted us. And
Woody, yeah.
we've had a
Nancy
good meeting
Gilly.
with those folks.
Yeah.
And so we're thrilled to be there, and we hope that it comes across that we want to do good by everybody. We want people to enjoy themselves. We want to be a part of the community. We're not out to change anything. If we get anything wrong, we want people to point it out to us, because I didn't grow up in San Francisco. I grew up in Baltimore. I'm a historian, and I love this stuff, and I love the detail of this stuff. But, we depend on people to help us tell the stories. When we first came here, every day somebody would walk in and say, you know, this belonged to Ginsberg or this belonged to Kerouac, and here's the story behind it.
Right.
And you learn a lot.
Well, and bringing it to V. Vale, who I just spoke with an hour ago, punk rock.
Right.
I mean, I used to go to the Fab Map across
Sure.
the freaking street in 1978, man, and that's a big part of the counterculture.
Without a doubt.
And that rebellion, and that, well, why San Francisco? Why here?
Yeah, that's the one
The
here.
Wild West, yep.
Yeah.
Jello Biafra and the
Yeah,
whole,
tell the story.
all of that stuff. And where do you think the two things, and then we'll be done, because I shouldn't go over an hour, and we just did. It's okay. What does counterculture mean to you, and where's it going? We already know where it started, where we sort of are now with the LGBTQ, and where do you see it going? Where do you see that?
Basically, there have always been countercultures. You know, the Greeks and the Romans had countercultures.
Love that.
It's people who don't necessarily either fit in or don't want to fit in. They see a better way. They don't necessarily buy into the dominant paradigm. Typically, they're saying things can get better, and here's one way of doing it. And countercultures come and go. And sometimes a counterculture becomes the new dominant paradigm of a society. And so what we're trying to do is help people, especially young people, through school groups that come in a lot to the Beat Museum, and we expect them to come to the Counterculture Museum as well, to understand that it's okay to be different, and especially if you understand why it appeals to you. One of the things we learned about being here at North Beach is people walk in all the time and they say, I feel like I've come home. I feel like I've found my tribe. Young people, 17, 18, 20 years old. Exactly. And you see that much more apparently over on Haight Street. I mean, just look at the way everybody dresses over there, you know.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of people wearing berets and you know, reading poetry on the streets
Black
here
leather
in North,
jackets,
right, in North Beach anymore. Although there were a lot of them here when we first opened 20 years ago. But the hate is still alive with it, you know. And just think of who you got that brought you there, you know. I mean, Jesus, the Grateful Dead has such a following, and everybody's still just digging it. And it's a matter of like, do your thing. And you know, again, it gets back to the philosophy of the Beats. We don't care who you are, what you look like, what you're into, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, come join the party. That's the message.
And luckily, because I live in the Haight, I've noticed when I was working at the little corner shop, there's a lot less kids on their phones, staring at their phones. I'm seeing a resurgence
That's a good point, Jerry.
or a thing of where kids are hungry for this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they are
And that's, I think, why
for the history.
Right, and I think that's why we've been embraced by, you know, the people in the neighborhood, simply because people recognize that. That's the first thing that we were told. We've been waiting for somebody to do this for 20 years. And I'll tell you, it's interesting because in the years that we've been here in North Beach for 20 years, I have spoken personally to quite a few different people who came to me and said, how do I build a hippie museum? I need to raise $10 million. I need to pay myself and all my board members, and I need to build a hippie museum. And I said, you know what? I can't help you with that, because if I knew how to raise 10 million bucks to do it, I'd be doing it. The only way I know how to do it is to find a way to start it. Start with what you got, where you are. Gary Snyder says that, you know, dig into the place that you are and find a way to do it. It's a great quote. And find your place on the planet, dig in, and, you know, take it from there.
Boom. And that's a wrap. Boom. Mic drop. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay.
I'm going to give Jerry a hug, y'all.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Oh,
Thank
my
you so
God.
much.
That was so awesome. Go further, young ones and old ones. Let's keep going, right?
Yep.